All right, everyone, now it's time to talk about Hispanic voting demographics. This has been now in the news since basically the Virginia, New Jersey elections, but especially since 2020 at large. Hispanics have lurched massively towards the GOP, and there are some people who say, well, that's just conservative ink. That's like the Ben Shapiro folks, the Republicans going woke, the Republicans selling out. Actually, during the same rough period, which is the Trump period essentially, I'm talking the middle 2010s, even before the 2016 election to now, and it's continuing, Hispanic voters have massively increased in scope in the GOP. They're massively more represented among the voting base during a period in which actually the party went considerably to the right. Trump's populism is economically considerably to the right of the Bush-Obama sort of neoliberal policies of yesteryear's GOP. That's exactly why all the neocon GOPers constantly talk about Trump and berate him on moral issues. Likewise, Trump did not abandon moralism in the GOP sense, as a general id poll sort of thing, with the exception of gay marriage. An issue that, by the way, won't win you a huge number of fans among the much more religious groups among Hispanics, especially among Catholics. Here's the problem. Conservatives for years kept saying to Hispanics, hey, vote for us. We're the Jesus party. Those are godless heathens over there that hate Jesus, and we love the Virgin Mary, even though most of us are Protestants, so join the GOP. Join the grand old party, the party that Jesus would have been a member of. They believed that this kind of identity politics was a winning issue. Leftoids took them for granted for decades because they were heavily tilted towards the Democratic Party. Now keep in mind, the Democrats have gone more far left and the Republicans have been going more far right. This nullifies the arguments made by the ethno-nat types that the Hispanics are natural-born far leftists importing Venezuela to the United States inevitably will keep far left ideology. If that were the case, we should see the inverse of this. They should love the Democratic Party more and more because it keeps offering more handouts. The problem is that in the last few decades, the Hispanic population of the United States has gone from primarily first generation to primarily not first generation. You don't have that big a degree of Hispanic people within the United States prior to the 65 Voting Act. The number has exploded since then, partially due to birth rates, but much due to immigration. If you have a first-generation Hispanic who's being, worked 50 hours a day, especially back in the day, for low wages, doing manual labor or something, naturally you would be inclined to vote for the welfare policies of leftism. If, though, as many Hispanics have done, you're not first-generation, you have no tangible connection to your home country. Your home country to you is the United States. That's number one. You speak fluent English. You probably go to college in most cases, community college, state college, university, whatever. Your family owned a business. Your dad worked that 50 hours a week and eventually had enough money, and he purchased a food cart. And now he's the biggest food cart runner in the entire county. He has 15 food carts and has a six-figure salary. There's going to be a huge difference between the kind of fiscal policies that you want versus someone who just came into the country. But what do we know about Hispanics that are recent arrivals? They're not voting. Why? Because they're not able to vote. They're not citizens. Illegals, likewise. I love it when people say, well, they're trying to replace everyone's votes by bringing people in. Well, I mean, unless you get a blanket amnesty, which would be stood in the way of, I think, by even the Dems in the Senate, it's a perennial issue for them. They promise it and then never deliver it. Then they're not voting. The legal Hispanics are, and that's, I think, another problem. The left always acts like a third-generation Mexican immigrant. Their grandparents came with nothing but the clothes on their back. Their parent was raised up, graduated high school, became an engineer. Now they've gone to college. They want to be a veterinarian or something. They are constantly bombarded by a Democratic Party, and this is both the left and the neo-libs, by the way, and so to some degree the rhino-cons trying to con them into the same thing, into thinking that it's their best interest to vote for blanket amnesty. Why the hell would you want to do that? You're a nice suburban middle classer. You don't want the unwashed masses around you. The fact that they happen to be the same skin color means nothing. Do you think that the average white suburbanite middle classer, for example, wants a bunch of penniless Polish people moving in next door? I don't think so. NIMBYism bites hard. I hate to tell you this, but the racial breakdown really is a backseat to the economic breakdown. It really does take that back seat. Now, they may say, ethnonats certainly would, well, I would rather have the poor white people than the rich black family next door because I want to keep to my people. That's fine. Number one, most people don't think that way. And number two, you're comparing two impoverished groups of people. Not rich people and poor people. And there's the difference, and there's where it really falls flat. I would expect if the GOP continues to adopt more economic populism, low tax, deregulation, pro-community policing when it comes to regulatory structures instead of federalized, top-down, states' rights, if it continues to do that. And abortion, technically speaking, is a winning issue for the GOP on this issue too. Not going to deny that, just like gay marriage used to be. Now it's a dead issue, but abortion never died as one. Different circumstances. If they do that, and especially if the Democrats continue to go far left, if you continue to have people like AOC and Bernie Sanders as the de facto faces of the party because they're incapable of shutting up, it's going to remind all of the Cuban expats of Castro. It's going to remind all of Venezuelan immigrants of Maduro and Chavez. And those are not good memories for most of these people. It would be like an Eastern European population that had come sometime during the Cold War that knows what life was like under Khrushchev, that probably not so inclined to vote for policies that are reminiscent of what they already went through. Because leftoidism is the face of economic dysfunction. It's also the face of immorality for a lot of people, for religious communities. Again, look at the Hispanic voting base. There's a lot of religion, Catholicism, whether it's liberal or more orthodox in nature, makes really no difference. It's a part of day-to-day life for a lot of people. So the conservatives were wrong. They spent years talking only about religion, but they weren't offering actual economic populism. Trump did. And Trump, above all the Republicans, he wasn't afraid to say, look, I don't want more illegals coming to the country. We're building a fucking wall. Those southern border communities that are disproportionately impacted by cartel violence and et cetera, are predominantly Hispanic. If you look at a map, and they have these little maps with arrows on them that show you which party the county tilted towards over the prior election and to what degree. What's the biggest swing in the whole country? The biggest swing of all towards the GOP. Red border counties. Well, technically blue border counties, but now it's a swing area. The Rio Grande Valley, etc. Biggest swing towards Trump of the 2022 election. Biggest swing towards the GOP, I believe, in 2016 as well. Well, if this continues for another election, you're not going to see that little thin blue line at the southern edge of Texas. The Democrats were hoping to pick that off for 3 election cycles. It just got out of their hands. Florida's probably no longer going to be a swing state after the next election. If, and only if, the Republicans don't snatch defeat from the jaws of victory by regressing to Bushism. My biggest advice to all the populistic Republicans, keep fighting hard to overwhelm the neocons in the party. Let them take their corporate money and become Democrats. Because it won't help them. It doesn't matter how much money you have when a supermajority of the public is turned off to your views. That's happening to the Democrats. Keep hammering them on their leftoidism. And inflation doesn't hurt, by the way. When the economy goes bad, the party that doesn't rule the presidency tends to get a boost. That part's fucking inevitable. That's about all. Peace out.